So, when foreign ministers from India and the entire Arab world got together for this huge summit, they put out a document called the Delhi Declaration. Now, on the surface, sure, it's just a bunch of diplomatic language. But if you dig a little deeper, it's basically a playbook for how India is navigating one of the most complicated, most volatile regions on the planet. And in this explainer, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to decode that playbook.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll set the scene for this really high-stakes summit. Then, we're going to see exactly where the declaration picks sides in the region's conflicts. After that, we'll look at what the document's silence on the bigger conflicts tells us. And finally, we'll unpack what this all reveals about India's grand strategy. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, the summit itself. Because to really get why this declaration is such a big deal, you have to understand the incredibly tense environment this whole meeting took place in. So, the event was the second India-Arab foreign ministers meeting held right in New Delhi. Now, this wasn't just some routine get-together. The first one happened a full decade earlier, a 10-year gap. So this reunion, it signals a major re-engagement, happening at an absolutely critical time. And let's be really clear about the scale we're talking about here. This wasn't just a few countries. This was India hosting all 22 members of the Arab League. I mean, just try to imagine the sheer geopolitical and economic power packed into that one room. It's massive.
And like I said, this summit didn't happen in some peaceful vacuum. The entire region was basically a powder keg. You had tensions between the US and Iran just ratcheting up, a really serious rift growing between old allies, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and all these new, highly controversial peace plans for Israel-Palestine being thrown around.
So how in the world did the declaration deal with this incredibly messy situation? Well, you might be surprised. When it came to the region's proxy wars, the document didn't hold back. It actually picked sides.
Okay, so before we dive into the nitty-gritty, you've got to understand this one core principle. It's the foundation for the entire document. Every position, every statement, it's all built on this idea. You have to protect the sovereignty and the borders of established nations. No ifs, ands, or buts.
And this is where you can really see that principle in action. Just look at Sudan, Libya, and Somalia. In every single one of these conflicts, there's a clear split. You've got one camp, led by the UAE, that's backing breakaway groups, like the RSF militia in Sudan. But then you have the other side, the Saudi-led camp, India, and the Arab League, all firmly lining up behind the internationally recognized governments. It's a very clear choice. They're choosing stability over disruption.
The declaration also takes a really firm stand on Yemen, specifically calling out and condemning the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. Now, this might sound like just a line in a document, but trust me, it's a huge shift. For 2 years, India had been very careful not to name the Houthis directly. Doing so now, well, it's a clear signal that New Delhi is aligning much more closely with Saudi security concerns in the region.
Okay, so the declaration is pretty blunt about these proxy wars. But what about the elephants in the room? You know, the conflicts that could drag the entire region into a much, much bigger war. Let's take a look at what the document says, and maybe more importantly, what it doesn't say.
You know, in the world of diplomacy, what you don't say can often be just as loud as what you do. And believe me, the Delhi Declaration has some very, very strategic silences. Take the Israel-Palestine issue, for example. Instead of getting tangled up in all the newer, more controversial plans floating around, the declaration does something really interesting. It reaches all the way back to an older consensus, reaffirming support for the Arab Peace Initiative from 2002. And that was no accident. It was a highly intentional choice.
And here's why that choice is so telling. The 2002 initiative, it's that classic land for peace idea, all centered on a two-state solution. Meanwhile, more recent American proposals, they were completely ignored, not a single mention in the text. This is a massive signal that India and the Arab League are sticking with a resolution based on long-standing international principles, not disruptive new ideas.
And then there's the biggest silence of all, the escalating military tension between the United States and Iran. The declaration doesn't mention it, not once. This wasn't an oversight, not at all. It's a calculated decision to avoid messing with the extremely sensitive, behind-the-scenes diplomacy that countries like Saudi Arabia and India are busy with, trying to de-escalate the whole situation.
So when you put it all together, the things they said loud and clear and the things they were strategically silent about, what does it all tell us about India's grand strategy in the Middle East? Well, it's a masterclass in walking a diplomatic tightrope.
Look, the foundation of this entire relationship really comes down to one thing: economics. And it all starts with this number, $240 billion. That's the annual trade between India and the Arab states. A number that big explains why, for India, stability in the region isn't just a nice idea, it's an absolute economic necessity.
And that massive trade relationship leads to India's core strategy, something you could call multi-alignment. See, it's not about choosing one camp over another, not at all. Instead, New Delhi focuses on building strong, practical, transactional partnerships with pretty much everyone, even with rivals like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, all based on mutual interests.
So here it is, the playbook in a nutshell. India builds these strong one-on-one relationships, but it keeps them siloed, separate from its public positions on bigger issues. This lets New Delhi be friends with countries that are rivals, while at the same time publicly championing principles like state sovereignty. And all of it is designed to protect the one thing its economy depends on most: regional stability.
The Delhi Declaration gives us this perfect, crystal-clear snapshot of India's sophisticated balancing act. But as the world gets more and more fractured, and as geopolitical lines get drawn harder and harder, it leaves us with one massive critical question. Just how long can this delicate, multi-aligned strategy actually hold?